It was a fun episode I had. Hey guys, hey, welcome to another episode of the Film Life Vlog. Recently, one of you guys asked about how to load this camera with film. It may seem like, this is a simple request, but I thought that I would help this person out, so this is really going to be a really short episode. So I figured instead of just showing this person how to load this camera with film, that I would go ahead and do an overview of this beautiful Nikon camera. Just look at this beauty, guys. Look at this beauty. So beautiful. Just a nice sleek little camera here. I'm gonna go through some of the features on this camera, and then I will show you guys how to load this little camera. These type of cameras, point and shoot cameras, are fun for everyone, for beginners, for enthusiasts, for little kids, for students. If you want to get into film photography and you don't have a lot of money, or you just want to dabble in it, this is certainly the best place to start. And a camera like this is actually quite sleek. It is very pocketable. I mean, compare this with my phone here. You can see the size difference. It's a lot thicker than a phone, but it is quite pocketable. This will fit most pocket sizes, and this will fit in your bags or your purses quite easily as well. So right from the onset, let's talk about how to turn this camera on. There's a power button right here. You just press this and it just turns on. And over here, these two little buttons are the zoom buttons. So that would zoom in and zoom out, just like that. This obviously is your shutter release right there. This camera combines certain modes on these two buttons here. For example, this button here in the middle is actually the button that you would use to select your flash mode. It's also the button that you would use to select your landscape or your portrait mode. And those modes will be reflected on this LCD screen right here. This button here is also a combined button of sort. It's the button that you would use to toggle the self timer for the shutter on and off. It's the same button that you would use to turn on the red eye reduction feature. You notice that this went into the sleep mode. That's one thing to be mindful of when you're using this camera, is if you don't attend to it for maybe a minute or so, it just turns off, but then the lens will stay out. And apparently, if you leave it in this mode for too long, it will actually drain the battery. So something to be mindful of. So a little press of this will actually turn the camera off for real. So I'm gonna turn it back on, and I'm gonna go through some of the modes here. So as you can see right here, this flashing E sign here is actually telling me that there's no film loaded in this camera, or that it's not loaded properly. In this case, there's no film loaded. Okay, so pay attention to this right there. It says auto, and then there's the flash right sign right there. So auto flash mode is that it will detect your composition, and if your composition requires the flash, it will turn the flash on depending on the lighting conditions. And right there is no flash, so that's the no flash mode. That's the second mode. And when I press this one more time, you see the flash mode. So this one means that the flash will actually activate every time you shoot. The flash will stay on. So that's the third mode. And you press it one more time, and this one says what? Auto slow flash. The auto slow flash mode is for situations when your subject and the background are poorly lit, and you want to shoot your subject but you do not want your subject to appear so bright that the background is sort of darkened in a sense. It happens quite often when your flash sync speed is too high, and it uses a faster shutter speed for the flash. Your subject will be lit, but the background doesn't get enough light, so the background will be quite dark. And so to avoid that mode, in those situations you would use this auto slow flash mode. It will actually shoot the image at 1/10 of a second. It will shoot that image at 1/10 of a second, which is quite slow, and that allows both your subject and the background to reflect enough light onto your film that will allow them to appear to be adequately lit. In those situations, obviously, you have to be mindful of how close you are to your subject. In the manual for this camera, which I would put a link in the description of this video, there's actually a guide to how far you should stay away from your subject depending on the film ISO rating that you put in your camera. Now, speaking of ISO, this camera is able to recognize the DX codes on the film that you load into the camera, so that's done automatically. There's another version of this camera that allows you, I think it's the 310 QD version, that allows you to be able to modify your ISO regardless, to override basically the DX code, but not this model won't allow you to do that. So I'm gonna press this button one more time, and that leads me to the landscape mode. You see right there? So that's the landscape mode, and in the landscape mode the flash is turned off. There's no flash because you don't need flash for shooting landscape, so that turns it off. So the other modes, the assumption is that you're shooting portraits basically, and if you're in the landscape mode, it will shut off the flash. It works as simply as that. So it's sort of combining both the flash modes and portrait or landscape mode, toggling that with the same button, which I find is, I guess it's quite simple and convenient. They've sort of made your work a bit easier because you're just toggling, but it can also make it a bit more confusing because now you have to toggle this so many times just to get your right setting, but not a big deal. And this button right here is what you would use to toggle your red eye reduction right there. See the little eye signal? That's what you use to toggle your red eye reduction on and off, and also the self timer. So now the self timer is off, no self timer, no red eye reduction, red eye reduction, red eye reduction with the self timer. They're both off, all on the same one button here. So as you can see, this camera is quite interesting, right? It's got your basic features, and it does it in a very simple way. Okay, so let's try and load this camera with film. So open the back like that, you shift this little thing, open it. And one thing that I need to mention is that even when the camera is off, like right now the camera is off because the lens is down, when you close this, your camera does not need to be on to advance the film once you load it, so be aware of that. Okay, so when you close this, notice that it's still working even though it's moving the film, advancing the film to the #1 position, assuming that you just loaded it with film, even though the camera is off. It will do that whether your camera is on or off. Okay, so let's now load it with film for real. Slip it right in. The film should be lying flat like that. I'm gonna close the lid, and hopefully this will work properly and advance it properly. Let's see. Okay. Now I can see why this camera is quite difficult to load. And now I'm gonna close the lid and hopefully it will take it this time. Okay, this camera is difficult. Whew. Gonna close the lid and we have it picked up this time. Wow. No wonder this guy recommended that I show how to do this. But I love a good challenge, so this is good. I'm gonna slip this in a little further. Oh gosh, this camera is funny. This camera is impossible to load. Oh gosh, so listen, whoever you are that asked me to do this, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all that you felt this way.
2,000 years later.
My goodness, that was hard. That was hard, guys. That was hard. I've never shot with this camera before, and the loading on this camera is crazy. It's very finicky. Feel free to like this video, to share this video, and to subscribe to this channel. Thanks so much, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, stay safe.